Welcome to Breaking It Down. I'm your host, Skyer Baylog. I'm here with Presque Isle County Clerk candidate Darrin Darga. He's running on the Republican side. Darrin, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here, Guyer.
Darrin, you already won the primary for Presque Isle County, and that's County Clerk. What is your background, I guess, as far as before you were ever running for office?
Before I was ever running for this office, I do have 7 years experience in the county clerk's office in Presque Isle. I spent most of that 7 years as chief deputy county clerk. So I have been hands-on with all of the functions in the office. Very specifically handled a lot of the payroll and HR things, but I was in court. And as chief deputy, it was my job to step in if needed when the county clerk wasn't available.
And you were a small business owner as well, weren't you?
Yes. I also was a owner of Big D's Pizza. My wife and I owned a pizzeria for about 7 years in Rogers City. Prior to that, I also worked at the Sheriff's Department in Presque Isle County as a dispatcher and corrections officer.
You know, what got you involved? You've been involved with politics for a little while, a few years. What got you involved in politics?
Really over 20 years ago, it kind of started. I first started in non-elective politics. I was just interested when we lived in Rogers City in my community and wanted to serve in my community, and there was an opening on our Parks and Recreation Board. And really that's how it kind of all started. I enjoyed the Parks and Recreation position after I was appointed to it. And actually, while serving on that board, we had a city councilman unfortunately pass away in office. And I put in for that, and that's kind of how the elective started for me. So I was appointed to that and then ran an election. And after that, we had moved to Posen about 10 years ago. I've also served as a township trustee and also on the village council in Posen for a while.
Now, you obviously have some experience in politics. What made you want to run for county clerk?
So for county clerk, initially, I always enjoyed my position in the county clerk's office. I really enjoyed the position in the county clerk's office. It's a busy office. It's one of the most touched offices of the community members that come in because they're so diverse, the things that are handled in there. I had really just, when I left the county clerk's office, it was mostly driven by realizing that I wouldn't necessarily want to run for the position while working in the county clerk's office against an incumbent.
It could be a bit awkward.
It would have been a rough 8 months. It's enough to run a campaign anyway, much less for both parties to sit 8 feet away from each other and do that. So now that I've been removed from the office for a little bit, it seemed like a perfect time to step back in. And I've just always aspired to that position. And then really taking a look at what happened with election security over the last few years, I felt like I could bring something to the table on that with just a fresh perspective.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up election security because obviously that's a concern for a lot of voters. Is it true that Presque Isle, some township in Presque Isle ran out of ballots in 2020? I mean,
it's my understanding that in 2020, I believe in the primary actually there was a shortage of ballots. And although I don't have the exact information in front of me on it, from what I understand, yes, they did run out of ballots. So they were able to fix it somehow with some sort of, because it's not an area that hadn't happened somewhere else before. So I'm not sure what the fix was for it, but I do know that it was in the news and people were a little disappointed with that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it had happened in a more populated area. I mean, what do you, I don't even know, they have to go home, they can't vote. I mean, people are working, they go to vote after they're done working.
Right. I'm really not sure because I think that even if they fix the situation, it doesn't help if somebody had to leave and then didn't get a chance to come back, so we'll never really know if there was an amount, a specific amount if somebody did get disenfranchised. But the important thing to note on that though is that so when you're ordering ballots for an election, the law, actually, it's codified in Michigan law that you're to order 25% more ballots than was cast in the previous corresponding election. So say you were looking at a primary, you'd look at the primary Republican or Democrat side, however many ballots were cast in the previous one 4 years prior, you would take that number and go with 125% of that is what you should order. And the curious thing about that is I do believe that if you look at the number of ballots, because we know how many ballots they had because they ran out, and you compare it to that 125% I don't believe was actually ordered for it. So technically that rule or law wasn't followed from the way I understand it.
Are you willing, I mean, it seems like such a simple thing, but are you willing to pledge that voters will be able to vote if you're county clerk? I mean,
well, I'm willing to pledge that I'm going to follow the statute for sure. I mean, whether it be a county clerk or township clerk, I mean, you definitely couldn't be held responsible if you were supposed to order 500 ballots and 530 people showed up. So that could happen because you can't just go crazy and go overboard on it. But I think what happened in that particular case is the people that showed up, exceeded that amount. And so that could have been fixed if things would have just been followed.
now, with how things are with the election, how are you as county clerk going to restore trust in the system without, I guess, bashing the people that are truly trying to make the election system work, like the township clerks? I guess what will you be doing as county clerk to kind of bridge the divide and make it, so that everyone can trust the election system in Presque Isle?
I think communication is key, and communication with your constituents is a big deal. Letting them know, answering the questions when they have it. You brought up a good point, not bashing. Not even necessarily to bash anybody who's currently in office, and certainly not our township clerks, because it's unfortunate we've entered in such a divide that in this country in general, and often when people start talking about if they question the security or the integrity of something election-wise, it immediately becomes personal, and I understand that because we have some fantastic township clerks in our area, but it's really easy to take a personal offense to it. But we need to remove ourselves and say, we're not going to necessarily say it's a people issue, but we don't know what the issue is, and to restore confidence, really just to answer the questions. Whether something was right or wrong, one of the biggest things that anybody on either side of the fence should be able to agree on is there was a large amount of people that weren't comfortable with the way the election turned out. And the problem was we weren't able to pull back the curtain and look at it. So, as county clerk, I want to be able to say, look, if there wasn't an issue here, we've exhausted every effort we can to make sure that there wasn't an issue. And the problem was in our last election that that didn't happen. We had, in the throes of COVID, the Secretary of State made so many decisions to change the standards for signatures on votes. They instructed machines have the digital images turned off on them, and so these are pieces of the puzzle that we'll never get back at this point.
How does, I guess, with Presque Isle, it seems like such a red county. They always vote Republican for president, and et cetera. How did they get a Democrat county clerk? And she's been in there for a little while, if I'm not mistaken. How did that happen?
Yeah, she's been in for several years, and her predecessor also was that. I think it's really because there is something to be said for our area, even though we do find ourselves being red in majority over blue. There is something to be said about just local politics. I think that some people looked at it and just said, look, these are the people that I'm voting for. Perhaps there wasn't challengers with the person prior to office. The person I'm running against right now, I don't believe has ever had a challenger. In her initial race, there was a non-party affiliated challenger. That usually doesn't bode well, but she came close. And then I believe that she had a primary challenger. So really nobody I don't know when the last time was that there's actually been somebody on the Republican ticket that really went for this office.
So I guess as far as the county goes, we've talked about the election stuff, and that's obviously a big part of what the county clerk does. But they do a lot more. Could you kind of dive into what else they do just besides elections?
So the other functions of the
Yes,
clerk's office.
yes.
So really, with the clerk's office, statutorily, there are nearly 600 statutes that point to the clerk's office. So it's a pretty big deal. Aside from elections, the county clerk's office also handles vital records for the county. So you're filing the death certificates, you're filing the few birth certificates that we get in our county anymore. Not having a hospital, we don't have many. But I've done some of those. We issue the marriage licenses, maintain the DD 214 records for veterans, and that's just the vital record portion. And then you get into the court. The clerk is the clerk of the court. So you're holding all of those records. You or a member of your staff is in the courtroom every time they're in session in the probate and circuit courts. So there's a lot of that, and then when we get past the statutory things, I've always kind of called that office, even when I worked in there, it's kind of the junk drawer of the county. So if there's something that isn't assigned, nobody ever says, hey, well, let's give this job to the sheriff or the prosecutor or the treasurer or the register of deeds. We don't know what to do with this, so let's put it in the clerk's office. Big example of that, is like I did a lot of the payroll and the HR things, because that's a very common practice in many of the counties for that to happen. And then, of course, another big item that happens in the county clerk's office is the CPL permits.
Well, and I wanted to ask you about CPLs, because you'll see some counties downstate that you hear that if you're not so pro-gun, you might slow down the process, and people obviously need CPLs so that they can secure themselves and carry, I guess, can you tell the voters if they will be able to quickly and swiftly get their CPL permits?
Well, I'd like to be able to tell them that they can definitely have everything happen in the county clerk's office expeditiously. The interesting thing about CPLs is I remember back when I worked at the Sheriff's Department, we used to run criminal background checks, and there was actually a board that did that locally that issued them. And a few years back, quite a few years back, the state took that over. And so interestingly enough, there isn't a lot that gets done. All of the work gets done in the county clerk's office, but the decisions are made in Lansing and through the state police. So to that end, when you're applying for your CPL, you're going to apply at the county clerk's office. You're going to make your payment. Your information is going to be entered into the computer by a staff member locally. And it's usually, at least when I was still in the office, we would usually see something within a week easily. We'd see a turnaround where a decision was made. So if there's anything that's delayed, I'm not sure what has happened in some of those other areas, if they just said that they were backlogged and couldn't get them in. But as long as you're doing your part in the clerk's office to get it in, any delay would rest with Lansing.
So to close with voting, I guess, how does someone in Presque Isle County vote for you?
Well, how they vote for me is they vote for me with the utmost confidence that I'm going to be the best county clerk that I can for the county, that I'm going to be a clerk for the people and not just somebody who answers to Lansing. But as far as the mechanics of how they're going to vote for me, so we have mail-in ballots, we have voting day, of course, and then we also have early voting, which is now available in Michigan. It's a good idea to check with your township clerks to find out where that is. Some townships have combined that. So if you're going to look at the early voting, which not a lot of people have done, but we can go out and utilize that, just contact your local election official or their website and find out where you need to go.
Well, thank you, Darrin, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Geyer. I really appreciate you having me here. I'm looking forward to being able to come back next time and talk to you about some different items as the county clerk of Presque Isle County.
A large retail store just canceled a huge order, leaving us with a ton of extra My Pillows. But you know what? That's their loss. I'm going to make it your gain. For the first time ever, you get standard classic My Pillows for wholesale prices, only $14.88. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.88. But it gets even better. For a limited time, I'm going to offer my entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Upgrade to a queen size My Pillow for just $18.88. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows for $29.88 and multi-use My Pillows for only $9.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size My Pillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so limit's going to be 10, and once they're gone, they're gone.